guys, welcome back to a new tutorial. This is going to be the start of a mini series where I'm going to be going through 5 videos on how to draw different hair colours and different hairstyles in colour pencil. So for this first one, I'm going to be going through how to draw auburn, sort of gingery looking hair, because this hair colour can be very difficult because you don't want it to look too sort of orangey and artificial. So I'm going to be going through how to get a natural looking hair colour, and we're also drawing an updo for this one, so that's going to be really fun to give sort of my techniques for. But just before we start, if you guys do want to learn how to master realistic colour pencil portraits, then make sure you check out my brand new course where you can learn all of my techniques. And so for you guys, you can get 15% off that by using the code SAVE15 at checkout. So the link is at the top of the description. Make sure to check out the course trailer to see exactly what's included in the course, and you can also buy it from there as well. So let's get into today's tutorial. If you guys want to see the real-time version of this hair study as well as the other 4, then they are available over on my Patreon in real time with voiceover, so you can follow along with me. So the colours that I'm using for this are the black pencil, a dark brown, so this is the Prismacolor Sepia. I'm also using burnt sienna, which is Caran d'Ache. I'm using burnt ochre. Most of these are Caran d'Ache pencils. I'm also using the brown ochre, and also just an orange colour in case we want those more saturated areas, and also a raw sienna, which is more like a yellowy golden tone. And I'm also going to be using an X-Acto knife to pull up some little details which you'll see me do later on. So those are the colours I'm using. I will list them in the description as well if you want to check them out. But the very first thing that I've done is I've obviously got the sketch down, but I take that raw sienna pencil, so that's our lightest colour, and I just start to use that to add the base layer. So I like to work on the hair section at a time, especially when it's like an updo like this and they are in quite obvious sections. So I first added that raw sienna everywhere, and then I go in with the burnt ochre, which is that slightly darker colour, to start to get in some of those shadows. So I'm going in lines, I'm following the direction that the hair is going in. And then I'm going in with my sepia, which is again another darker pencil, and I'm using that for the even darker shadows, which tend to be on either sort of end of each section of hair. So the ends of each section of hair are darker, and then as you get towards the middle of the section of hair, it's more highlighted. So I just start to build up more and more shadows using the sepia and the burnt sienna as well. And then once I've got that in and the basic shadows, I like to blend over with that with our lighter colours like the raw sienna to start to get a smoother look. Once I've got that smoother look, I then go back in with our shadows like the black for more of the intense shadows, and just start to really get that contrast how I want it to be. So that's all I do for each section of hair at the moment, and I just repeat that process throughout each section of hair. So again, first going in with the raw sienna, you don't have to use those exact same colours. You know, anything light, like a light sort of creamy yellow, like a yellow ochre, something that's not too saturated and is quite natural looking. And then I go in with the burnt ochre, which is a very warm sort of orange brown tone. It's not too orange and in your face, it's just a very natural colour, which is what you want when you're drawing auburn ginger sort of hair. You don't want it to be too vibrant. Then I go in with the burnt sienna, which is again that reddy brown tone, so it's great for auburn red ginger hair. And the brown, I just find that browns are nice for darkening up and areas, and blacks are great if you need to get really dark. One tip I do have for you guys is if you are using black for your hair drawings, I don't recommend just doing black. I recommend layering other colours over the top so it does look a bit more natural. Otherwise it can look quite flat and it won't really work with the other colours in the hair. You want the shadows in the hair to look natural. You don't want it just to look black because that just look very strange. You just want that nice dark brown tone. So I'm basically doing that exact same technique over and over again for each section. It is important to work in like sections because the hair is in clumps. It's not just loads of loose strands of hair. One technique that you can see me do now though is I am using the Faber-Castell like ink eraser, and it's kind of like one of those stick erasers, and I'm using that to lift up some of the colour pencil for areas that are a bit more highlighted. Maybe there's some flyaway little clumps, like looser bits of hair to give a messy look, and so I just lift the colour pencil off and then I go back in and just darken it up because you don't want it too light. So now I'm moving on to the braid part of the updo. And when you're doing updos and when the hair's like up and it's in like a messy bun, it can be very kind of confusing because there are a lot of random shapes of hair. but honestly, just focus on the reference and focus on each individual shape one at a time and just render each shape. It may look a bit weird, but once you've done them all, it will really come together. And the colours that I'm using are the same, in the same sort of order. Some areas might be more shadowed, so you might need to layer some more of the darker browns and the blacks, and some areas might be slightly lighter where they won't need so much of those darker shadows. So each section of hair will be different depending how much light is getting to it. The darker shadows, like you can see in between each of these sort of plaits, in between the sections, there are bits of darker shadows, and that's because they are more set back, so not as much light is getting to them as like the loose strands of hair on the top of the hair. So that's why you can see me layering a bit more black and a bit more brown tones. So my key sort of recommendations when drawing ginger hair is to avoid using such bright orange tones. As you can see here, it looks nice and ginger, but it looks natural. It doesn't look really orange. And that's because I'm not just using orange colours. I'm using very natural tones like the burnt ochres, the burnt siennas, the browns. I'm not going in with like bright oranges and bright yellows. That's similar to when you're drawing blonde hair. You don't just want to go in with really bright yellows when you're drawing blonde hair. Try to stick to those neutral, natural tones when you're drawing hair. No matter what hair colour you're drawing, try to stick to the less sort of saturated colours. So I'm working on the bottom part of the braid. Again, this time I'm going in with the burnt ochre first, so you can switch the sort of way that you apply the pencils. You don't have to apply them in the exact same way, like the same order, like the raw sienna, then the burnt ochre. You can mix it up and try different things for yourself. Sometimes I layer them in different ways, but I'm still using the same colours. It's just sometimes I might blend out with the light colour at the end rather than adding it as a base layer at the start. So sometimes I might want to apply the darkest shadows first rather than working from light to dark. But that is up to you. I just switch it up sometimes as I'm doing the hair just to do something different, especially if you're drawing a lot of hair. It can be nice to change it up a bit. But as you can see, on their own, none of these little sections of hair would look realistic, but together they are starting to look realistic, and they will look a lot more realistic when I go in and I use my knife technique, which is the thing that I do to really, really make it look like 10 times more realistic in my opinion. Now I'm working on the actual sort of bun part of the updo, and again this is a lot of like curled sections all sort of looped into each other, and this can be very confusing if you try and do it all in one go. You really do need to take this slow. One mistake that I really do see a lot of people do when they're drawing hair is they don't take it slow enough. They go too messy, they don't spend the time layering each section, and it really comes across in the final result. If you've rushed it, you'll be able to tell. This hairstyle did take me about 2.5 hours to do, which it is quite a long time, but it's not if you are getting a good result. So it's not an awful lot of time to invest if you're getting a great result, rather than you spending like an hour doing something but it not looking great and you have to try and correct it and you're not happy with it. It's worth spending double the amount of time to make something that you're really proud of. And you should put a lot of time into your work because you're not trying to rush it. You want to do something that you're proud of. So I'm just building it up and building it up in the exact same way. So back to what I was talking about. With blonde hair, you don't want to use those yellow tones. So stick to your neutral colours. And also, it's fine to use black, like I said. You can use black. It might seem weird to use black, but as long as you layer other colours over the top. So now I'm using my X-Acto knife, which is just a crafting knife. It's quite cheap, and you can see I'm using it to scrape off the coloured pencil to reveal the lighter layers underneath. And what this means is you can use the knife to get really, really fine details that you wouldn't be able to get with your pencil. So you can use it to get those flyaway strands of hair and detail within each section of hair that you've done. And it really just helps break up all those uniform sections of hair so that you can get really realistic looking hair, because you can add the loose little strands that go over each section. And it just really does help make it look a lot more realistic, because of the fact that before it just looked really uniformed and there was no sort of messiness to it, but now it looks a lot more natural. But anyway guys, that is it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember that you can get my course if you want to learn even more about drawing realistic portraits. Then check out the top of the description, and all of the real-time tutorials are available on Patreon if you do want to follow along and put what I've kind of talked about into more practice and actually create this drawing yourself. But this is the final result. Let me know if you have any questions. Anyway guys, that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new around here for more tutorials like this. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everybody!